I will be setting up in the break because I was running late this morning because my GPS sent me to I don't know where. It took me half an hour to find my way back here. So I will be setting up some Big Mac step-by-step, some various low-tech devices that you can play with. You can't take them because most of them belong to Surrey School District, but I borrowed them over the summer for you to look at there. So, I'm just going to make sure. Now, just a minute, this technology doesn't work. I guess I'll be sitting down here. All right, so just a few things that I'm going to talk about. Some of it I'm going to flip through really quickly because Karina did an awesome job talking about. Right, now my computer's shutting down. So it's going to, no, it's saying it's restarting. Oh, well, I was doing that. So basically what I'm going to do is just flip through the factors affecting communication. I'll talk about the types of AAC systems. I'll talk about where do you start. There's so much overwhelming. What do I do to get ready? Where do I go from there? We're going to do an activity where you fill in the communication dictionary on your child. And I have lots of copies, so you have one you can take with you that's blank as well to set up at home. And then continue on other things of what you can do or where to start. But of course, Windows is shutting down and it's starting again. Basically, there are two broad factors that affect communication. One is the physical factors of your child and that go along with Rett syndrome, and the other are environmental factors that play a big part in this. Didn't want to shut down while I was speaking the last hour. So basically, Karina went through things like problems with respiratory, breathing, hand movements, apraxia or dyspraxia. Apraxia is the total loss of the ability to do it. Involuntarily, dyspraxia is the partial loss of being able to do that. And we just tend to just lump it all together and call it apraxia. We can talk about altered muscle tone, like high or low dystonia and involuntary movements and all of that, which Karina went through. Oral motor skills affected by dysarthria, which is low muscle tone, and apraxia, which is motor planning. Then you've got other physical factors. Still doesn't want to do it. It's only at 27%. So I'm going to bring this till we get through there. You've got the positioning of scoliosis and all of the other factors there. You've got seizures. You've got fatigue and reduced alertness. They also have difficulties with sensory regulation. They may be at any time of the day over or under responsive, and we need to adjust for that. And it can happen within the same 5-minute period because you're doing some type of sensory things. Also, the child's mood, just like our mood to communicate, can be affected just by fatigue, by all sorts of things. Also, being very anxious in a situation. I got to try and, I'm prepared. I'm going to share some information about what I did last night. I've got it all ready, but I don't know if I can do this, and you get very, very anxious, and then your body doesn't cooperate, and then you're not able to do that. And then the other big thing that, just a second, I'm demonstrating anxiety. Demonstrates some anxiety, that's right. I thought I was anxious enough that I was away in California till Thursday night, and it was 110 degrees, 38 to 40 degrees, and I was hoping that I wouldn't get to a point where I couldn't get on the plane to get back. So I got back and didn't sleep. One of the other things that Karina didn't address as much is vision aspects. Lots of kids with complex bodies do have a lot of vision issues. They can have a disorder called cortical visual impairment, which is not what you see, so it's not affected or would not be changed by wearing glasses. That's a different aspect. It's the without the information that the eye is taken and then transport via the various systems to the back of the brain where the cortical visual cortex is. And I'm not going to go into CVI, but it's something that you need to be aware of. If your child has a diagnosis of CVI, it does affect how you present materials and where you do it and all of that sort of thing. So there are some really good online workshops, and there's some I discovered in the Rett University, also in the International Rett Syndrome. There's a really good workshop on what is cortical visual impairment and what does that mean in your child. Now I'm hoping that at the end of this with the handout that I have, that it'll be able to be electronically given to you so that you can have all of the references and stuff that I'm talking about. You don't have to write them all down. I'm hoping that Christine will be able to do that. If not, I can talk to my friend, colleague Karina, and we can get it out to you that way. Okay. Now it says it's 100% ready, but it's not letting me do that. So with vision, with children with Rett syndrome, some of the latest studies that are coming out, some of them were 2018 and some are 2023, they're saying that what our children do with Rett syndrome is that they tend to hone in onto one part of the target while avoiding other parts of it. So they may be paying attention to one little aspect. I had a very long time ago, I had a girl that what she did was she saw a picture of, the teacher taking really good pictures of the activities in the classroom. And one of them was the sandbox. And she actually liked, she couldn't actually play in the sand, but she liked to watch kids play in the sand. And they would put things, the sand on her hands, and she loved that. And then one day she was getting really agitated every time this picture of the sandbox was shown. She was really, really upset, and we couldn't figure out what it was. When we took a detailed look at the picture, in the corner of the picture was a red shovel. Not a whole red shovel, just part of the red shovel. And to her, she honed in on that red piece, that red shovel. And because it wasn't there in the sandbox anymore, she was upset because it didn't mean the sandbox. So you don't really know what it is they're paying attention to. So if you're using photos, you have to be really careful the quality of the photo and clean up the background. So that can be an issue that we need to deal with. They also have very immature scanning patterns. So you might give them a lot of choices that they see visually, but they may not be going from one piece to the next one, to the next, like we do. They might be jumping all over the place. So that's something to think about. If something isn't working, we can do other things. Like I often will have a little flashlight, and I will shine it onto the part that I'm getting them to look at. And you'll see that there, I have also made out of cardboard, and because I couldn't get the red, I made, and wanted to last, I used electrical tape. My daughter's she had it in her toolbox, which is an electrician, so I I used her red tape and put it around, so I made a square that was cut out that was red, so it sort of stands out, and I would place it over what I wanted the child to look at and scan across. Karina does that a lot as well. I have some of those that I'll show you, one that I just made last night. I put it up there because all the others are at my office. Let me just take a break for a minute, see if I can get this. Some other aspects is, and Karina pointed that out, you need to give your child time to process. They've got to process what you're saying, think about it, then they have to try and get their body to cooperate in order to respond. So then you may need to wait. And if you keep, say, asking the same thing over and over again, that means that's not going to help. They're just going to get frustrated with you, and then their body will be less likely to cooperate as well. That is actually in Australia, sitting on my brother-in-law's back deck overlooking Sydney Harbour. So it's another fire. Yeah, he's a multi-millionaire. very skilled. Here is not mine. So while that's trying to cooperate, I'll just, the other thing, sometimes our students, our kids will have trouble seeing a target even when you've got it so it will pop up. That's kind of a feature of many communication systems, high-tech systems. A feature will pop up so you can actually see this is what you focused on. And with lots of children with visual impairment, that's a good thing, but sometimes that doesn't work for our children with Rett syndrome. Sometimes it does, but we just have to play around with that to see. The other thing is, you know, I mentioned they may also have cortical visual impairment. And there's 10 characteristics of that. I don't have time to go through those today. It's really not part of this talk. But it is something that I am very skilled at and have done lots of courses on it and work with part of my teams at school. But on the handout, there will be, a guide to it.
There's like enable external content and then go okay.
I'm not seeing that. One of the biggest things is I use the terminology presumed competence. Having just listened to Karina, I would rephrase that to presume potential for competency. That's okay, no problem. See, we have our children that do that in the middle of people talking all the time. We just either ignore it or we tell them to be quiet, the same as we do. So the things that often affect our students and their children, their ability to communicate, is that people don't think that they can do anything. Because their bodies are not cooperating and there's stuff there. People think, well, they don't have the intelligence there. They don't have the ability to do that. And that is really hard because there's nothing worse. I mean, the only thing I can think of that, apart from this not working, is when I was doing a lot of traveling in Europe and I'd be in a country where I knew a little bit of the language, say Germany, knew a little bit of it, enough to know where various things were and to read things. But when people spoke to me in German and sometimes it seemed to be too fast. I know what they're trying to say, but I really can't, and I can't respond. They don't treat me like I'm very intelligent. Like I just don't know what's going on. Now, most of my interactions with German and Austrian people haven't been like that, but sometimes, especially when you're trying to go for the train, and it's not, and they suddenly make this great big announcement, and you see half the people on the station running somewhere else, and you're like, what am I supposed to be doing? Those sorts of things are very tough. And when your body won't cooperate or your mind's not figuring out what it is frustrating. And I just think how much frustration our students and your children must go through on a daily basis. So what I want to say to what I want to say to people is, wait, let them have a chance to show you that they're communicating, they're understanding, they have a lot to say. So as you can see on the bottom of this slide, it has the reference, and so you'll be able to look at that yourself. The people, what affects their communication is the people in the child environment. How well do they understand, interpret, and respond to the child's attempt to communicate? And then it's the belief of the person working with the child, the communicative partner in the child's environment, that they have an ability to communicate, that they are able to communicate. And you know, your girls have been communicating since the day they were born. Maybe we don't always understand what it is they're communicating, but we know they are communicating. We are social beings and we communicate in uterus. I mean, how many mothers here know They feel like they're in the bathroom because my kid's moving and kicking and right, or they're listening to music and they seem calm and relaxed. They're communicating. They're communicating with their bodies in a way that they can. So again, I'll change that slide to say presumed potential, and that word can lead to competency. Our students have a voice. We need to get to it. And then, how well are we actually listening to them? That, I think, is really important. And then this comes out, part of it comes out of the communication guidelines. All right, thank you. So that, I looked up the communication guidelines and I've downloaded myself. A lot of that is really good to give to school teams. Maybe not the whole thing because it's quite full, but I'll pull out pieces and slowly give teams as I'm educating them more, as well as when they're able to take this bit, then I'll give them another bit and then another bit. And some of my teachers are here, we work well together that way. There's types of AA, so we're just going to go on to the types of AA systems. There's unaided systems and aided. This is how ASHA, which is the American Association of Speech and Hearing, defines AAC systems. One is where the unaided is where you're relying on the child's body to communicate effectively, to convey messages. Now, because you know your children, that's not always reliable for them, but they are often communicating in that way. I do have I had one little girl who was able to use her hands in the early stage, younger years, and she had some signs that she used. Now, were they actually really well done signs that are typical of an ASL? No. Her signs were approximations, but as you knew what she was doing with her hand movements, you knew what she was trying to communicate. So sometimes people teach sign language like more, stop, go, those types of things. Your child will be able to understand it with no problem. Being able to reproduce them, not necessary. Aided is that you have to have specialized tools or equipment. They can be low and high tech, and all sorts of things here that you can use. So I'm just going to go quickly through types of AAC. They can be considered no tech, low tech, high tech, and there's all sorts of terminology in between. No tech systems, again, body language, where the child's using their body to communicate with you. And as you get to know those movements, the communication partner, attaches meaning and it says what they're doing. And then, of course, if they've made the wrong assumption, the child will let them know really well quickly that that's not what I meant. There's gestures, like I say, there's sign language. There's also informal gestures that can mean all sorts of things. I have students that use the weirdest kind of movements, but it's something their body will allow them to do easily, and then we attach meaning to that. And then we have no-tech systems, such as other is considered like hex binders. I don't tend to use those very much anymore because PEX binders is a picture exchange communication system. It's not really a robust language system. It does teach communicative concepts, but it's pretty hard because your child has to be able to take it, give it to you, drop it, release it into your hand for what they want. That already is presuming that they have the ability to do that at all times, and that's not realistic. But just mentioning what they are. We have choice boards which can come in all sorts of shapes, sizes. They're very helpful and useful if you can set them up in a way that your child can respond to it. Eye gaze, general gestures, whatever that way. There are communication books that we used to make up a lot of before we had a lot of access to technology such as iPad. We made a lot of time with communication books. And then pod books are a pragmatically organized dynamic display. Well, if they came up with that, I don't know. It is an Australian-based system. It was developed in Australia by Dale Porter and followed through in the States by Linda Burkhardt. I have some in the back that I will set up that you can look at. They are templates of how to making one. I haven't got them laminated and all of that because we just run them through the photocopier when we need them. And you can personalize all these sorts of things. And we can have core boards such as I think it's down here in the left hand. That's not this is kind of our core board. Often, like if you're in Surrey School District, we tend to use the main page of a communication system that we think we might be working to, but you can see core boards at all shapes, sizes. The intent of the core board is to introduce communication, but also that you can use a variety of words across a variety of situations. You don't have to have 300 words for 300 different situations. For example, the word go can be used in a variety of ways, and you know, go somewhere or go away. All types of things. Let's go, anything that way. And then the other things that we do a lot of is eye gaze to each hand. That's just this type of thing here that you will see, where you and I have some at the back too, where you're looking, you are holding each hand up in front like this, and I tend to find it's easier if I sit down in front of the child and I have my hands down here resting, because you hold that. If you're holding that each hand up for any period of time, it can get heavy, but you're resting at that, you're looking directly at your child, you can see what's going on, you can see the eye movements. Sometimes those eye movements are so subtle, you need to really be knowing where they're looking. And there's a variety. They can go from very, very simple to extremely complex. And then other sort of low-tech things, I have a bunch of these that you can play with. I'll have them set up in the break and you can get up and play with them and look at them yourself. They can include things like Big Mac, that's not the hamburger, existing up here, and the color thing can be any different color. There's about 4 different colors it can be. You can have step-by-steps. Now Big Macs, the difference between a Big Mac and step-by-step is a Big Mac records I think like 30 seconds of single message. A step-by-step you can have, if you've got levels, there's 3 different levels, you can have 4 messages on each section. So if you want to do something like an interaction, for example, say they're doing show and tell, they could do, guess what, the first one could be, guess what I got today? You know, it's big and red. It goes, rrr, yeah, that's right, it's my fire engine. So that's 4 different messages that have to hit the device 4 times. It gives a little bit of an interaction. There are hundreds of ways to use them. In fact, if you Google 101 ways to use Big Mac or step-by-step, you get all sorts of things and ideas. There's things like Go Talks, things like this, Tech Talks. There's so many different things that are out there, but most of them require ability to touch, to use your finger to do it. You can set them up to use head movements as well that will activate. But these are simple stuff that you will see in a school district, usually. Let's see if I can get this to work. This is just 2 grandparents who are trying to introduce well, they say a Big Mac, but it's actually a step-by-step to their daughter, to their granddaughter. It's not going to work. I'll get it to work later on. But basically, what was happening in it is they were getting her to tell some information. So we're encouraging her to use a gross hand movement to hit it on the Big Mac, and she was actually able to do that. And then things were happening, and then the grandparents were getting all excited because they were talking about Grandpa and what they like to do with Grandpa, and then Grandpa responded with, "Wow, that's awesome! Look, he's communicating." I'm not sure the child knew exactly what she was saying on the step-by-step, but she got that reaction of that interactive thing. And I think once you do it a few times with your girls, you'll see that they do understand what's happening. And often I'll give them a choice. I'll say, do you want to share information about the movie we watched, or do you want to, so you might do it as yes, no. Do you want to share information about the movie you watched? They say, they turn away or they don't respond. Oh. Or do you want to share information about what we did, or where we went last night? And then you give them some choice so they have some control about what can be put on even a low-tech device. And then how high-tech, I'm not going to go into this because next speaker, Tammy, will be talking more about that. But there's iPads with apps such as Touch, Chapman, Word Power, Pro Recorder Go, Core First. I think also Grid 3's system also works on an iPad as well. There are multiple types of eye gaze systems out there. When I first started working with eye gaze about 20 years ago, there was no technology, high tech to do. We were doing all low tech and E-tran boards. And then even over the years, I always say with one of my students I share with Karina, I'm the school SLP, Karina's privately. We always said this child was, the technology hadn't caught up to his abilities. And I will say that the technology is starting to catch up, and he's doing amazingly well with eye gaze on technology. With scanning devices, this is a young lady here who's she has a bit of head control, so she's using a switch to move it along there rather than just her eyes. I do have a student right now, a young lady who uses both scanning and eye gaze. Because sometimes she gets really tired with the eye gaze, so she'll try the scanning, and then sometimes she's too tired to do any of it and her body won't cooperate. But she knows what to do and how to do it. And sometimes I'll just ask permission, can I help advance it to the screen that you want? I think this is what you want, is that it? And she'll say yes, and then we get there faster that way. Okay, there's all these things out there. Where do I start? That's the question I usually ask too. You want to gather information. So I use parents as a fantastic resource, because who knows, when they come to the school system, they're 5 years old, before going on 5. You know your daughters. They've been with you for 5 years. So you know what things that they can do and how they communicate with you. And I want to know that. I don't want to spend a year trying to figure out things that you've already done and might let the child be frustrated because, how come Mom and Dad understand what I want and you don't? So I think having a team is vital. There's no way that I think you can do this journey on your own. It is too hard. It's too emotionally involved, but you are your children's best advocates because you need to get yourself educated as much as you can so that you can fight for them. And I will say, the squeaky wheel that does it appropriately gets far more attention than other people, and you need to be there for your daughters. And as long as you can do it without being the parent that is screaming and yelling and hollering which they have the right to do because they're not getting a child there, but that sort of turns all the professionals off because they're exhausted too and overworked as well. I don't really know any professional who is not there for the child, who wants to make their child's life better or more enriched. The other thing is to create a personal communication dictionary. And Karina mentioned that early. And basically, it's just a written document of, this is what the behavior is, this is what it means, and this is how I respond to it. So what is the child doing? Sometimes you get it wrong. Like I had this child, I was convinced that she was saying yes when she did this, and it took quite a few visits. And finally, when I realized that that's not what she meant, I got this eye roll, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, I've been misinterpreting all the time. She's like, it was almost like, oh, finally this stupid woman figured out what I was saying. It's okay. And then we talk about how to respond. We want to say, oh, I see that you're looking towards such and such. I think what you're saying is that you'd like to look or engage with this activity, and this is how I respond verbally. And having it all written out so that we respond, and in the school system or in the outside adult world, we respond the same way or in the same manner that you respond, then the child knows, okay, you guys get my communication. I can relax a little bit. I'm not so anxious. The less anxious I am, the more my body will cooperate, and it becomes better that way. So basically, it's just a document, and I call it a living document because it changes all the time. Some things remain the same, but other things we discover. So I always ask parents to fill out some things. I'll give them some guidelines like, how do you know that she wants to do this? How do you know she doesn't want to do this? What does it look like when your child's happy? What does it look like when your child's in pain? All different sorts of things that way. And then it just allows everyone to have a standard response to your child's communication attempts and takes away some frustration and anxiety. And then it just records everything and we have it down there. So this was just an example. This child was looking away, turns her head away. What we assumed that meant was they weren't interested in the activity. So I would say, you know, John, you're looking away, or Jasmine, you're looking away. You're telling me you don't like this particular activity. Let's see if there's something else you like, and then offer another choice. And just some heads down, hands sometimes in mouth, eyes closed. Maybe that's when they're tired or sleepy, or maybe they're bored with what you're doing. They don't want to do this. So you can think about how to do that. And then just various things like this. Loud, low-pitched vocalizations, whining, rocking in a chair, agitated facial expression. Maybe it means I'm hungry and I need to eat right now. So you'd say, oh, I can tell by your face and voice that you're not happy. I think you're telling me you're hungry. And then offer them some choices of what they can eat, or if they're on their G-tube, then set that up. So now it's your turn. I'm going to give you all a copy of a blank communication dictionary. What I'd like you to do is you can do it one-on-one or you can do it in partners. That's fine. I have lots of, everyone hand those out. It's two-sided. So there's lots of extra ones, so you can take two. You can take one to take home with you, and I also have the reference the way you can actually download it. So just think about your child. What is a behavior? And maybe some of the professionals that work in a school system might want to pair up with a parent, and so they can ask their parents what their child does. I want you to, I'll give you like 5 minutes, so I want you to start filling this out. Everyone gets two. One is a blank one that you can take home and add to it about your child. If your child is not in the school system yet, or is going to go to preschool, having a communication dictionary there that you can give your family or your teens, or if they're in an adult situation, if you're going to an adult program, that you can give the team that. And you can ask them to add to it. It's a living document added on. Then you can get a copy of what they add and say, well, actually, I don't see this, or you can fine tune it or tweak it. That sort of thing. There's lots of things that you can be doing, but this is really, I find, extremely valuable to have, because there's always going to be a change on your team. Parents, you're going to stay solid with your children into adulthood and beyond, but the teams change all the time. Your individual educational assistant in a school, or sometimes in Surrey they're called IESWs, sometimes they're known as EAs, sometimes they're SEAs, depending on the school district. They may change from year to year. They may stay with your child for 2 or 3 years. You may want to change of the EA, so that's not, change is not always bad. So if you'll have I'll start trying to do that, and I will come around and you can ask any questions. Think about how does your child let you know a yes? That this is something that she wants and she tells you. How does she do that? Maybe how does she tell you she doesn't like something? What does she do to you? Yeah, I know, but it's not necessary to be. Oh.
Okay. Okay. Clear. Okay. No, I don't want to do that. Okay. Yeah, like, so she's this.
when you do this, is that what that means?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. But she seems to be
you don't, and one of the things that came up is this seems to be a lot of work to do. You don't have to do it all at once. You can just put one thing down, come down next, maybe a week later, put another thing down. It's ongoing, so don't make it onerous for yourself.
So it's more activities versus surroundings. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
One of the things one of my colleagues who I work with in school district Lowell brought up was that with some of the students that she's had, not necessarily the ones with Rett, but students that they've had, when they've seen something like this particular student had problems with a shunt in his head and he was in pain, but we didn't recognize what was going on. He was making some sounds. She FaceTimed a parent in the workplace, FaceTimed it for a few minutes, and was able to find out, oh no, that's what this means. I need to make arrangements for him to come home, something's really wrong. But that, you can do that if parents are able. Sometimes when you're in a workplace where that's not possible, but sometimes you can take 5 minutes to just do like a Zoom call or a FaceTime call or something like that. So, or even if the professional tapes, quickly rubs out their phone and takes that into the parents. We saw this and we've seen this, well, we're not sure what that means. Do you have any ideas? That's really helpful. And with technology these days, it doesn't have to be waiting for 2 weeks to have this great big meeting. We can do it online. And sometimes I do assessments through the communication matrix with the parents online. And that gives me some other skills because the child doesn't have to cooperate with the communication matrix, it's about behavior. And you can assess a child's skills. Got some ideas to write down? Okay. So is it your child? Yeah. So it's kind of like what you're looking for is what does a child do? How do you know a child enjoys it? You don't want to be doing activities that are not motivating for the child. It's hard work. So how do you know if your child is enjoying it? What did you see? Maybe they're looking at you. Maybe they're just turning away and like some father kids can roll their eyes. So now you're saying, I don't think you like it. So I would like that. There is the whole thing that you get that tells you some things, but there's a whole thing in your mind that says how to provide communication. Exactly. Sometimes kids can rub their eyes for other reasons, so it's good to know with your daughter that that's what that means and how you respond. Okay. You guys able to fill some of this out?
I'm new, so I'm just, yeah, I wouldn't be able to do anything, but I'm happy to.
Just kind of, if you see it as behavior, sometimes I'll write a behavior down, I really don't know what it's about. And so I might ask other people, have you seen this behavior?
Yes.
What do you think might be happening? And it's just your best guess.
Yeah.
And if it's not the right guess, then you'll just do it. The child will tell you. Like, well, it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
So basically, I see this, you're telling me you're frustrated. I'm not sure what you need, so I'm going to ask you some yes/no questions. Are you hungry? Are you busy? And if they don't respond, then you just go through. I'm not sure, you haven't responded to me, so I'm going to try this with you. Just let them know what you do. It looks difficult once you start doing one or two things. It's not. And you can get a whole team to fill it.
Yeah. Okay. I asked because I'm totally new to this radio. So the like, is it so in terms of like various like that's we're trying to teach different persons that or I see what I was just saying like the speaking I'm I'll turn it on to you and then I can ask you after.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, no problem. Just think about it. It's okay.
Yeah, all good. It's the literacy piece. I just
Louise, have you found some ways of filling this form out? It's really not hard. You don't really have to overthink it. Just what do you see? If someone said that they see sometimes with hair quality, it could mean a whole bunch of different things. And so it usually means they're frustrated, but they're not sure what they're frustrated about. So it's suggested going through some, are you hungry? Waiting for a yes, no. Are you uncomfortable? Do you need to be moved? Sometimes they're very uncomfortable in their chair and they need to be moved around. Sometimes they can do it themselves, but not always. The body might cooperate. So I would go through some basic needs systematically. And you'll probably do it in the same way. So the child knows, okay, no, I'm not hungry, I just want you to move me, but you're going to get to that in a minute. And I can respond. Did anyone want to share one that they did?
I see. That's in that.
Still there?
I'm trying to understand what are the basic steps because I feel like I'm behind.
So for our daughter, if from very early in her age, when she was young, and I don't know why, but this means that she really needs to go to the bathroom. It's always accurate, whether she needs to void or whether she's having a DM. So it's a really beautiful way for us to know.
Yes. And I wouldn't have assumed that that's what it meant, so that's really good to know. And because your daughter's doing that all the time, she assumes that you know what she means. And as a parent, you do, but other people involved with her may not know what that meant. And so if you have it laid out there, they can look at it, they can see how to respond to what they need to do. Okay, you need to go to the bathroom, right? Or have a change or something like that. That's really good. Anyone else have one that they want to share?
When our daughter Indy needs to go to the bathroom, usually if she needs a BM, she will start, and she's always moving, like always walking around the house. But she almost never runs for any reason, except for when she's two. And have a BM, so she will start like doing these little mini sprints around the room. Usually just like for 2 seconds she'll run, and then right before it, she's this movement, and then you know.
Very useful information. And so we just sort of add to that. So it's an ongoing document that you can share with the team, the school and the team, and they can add to it as well, what they see, and then share it with you, back to you, and then you can see, well, no, that never happens at school. Because sometimes there is behavior that happens at school that doesn't happen at home. You've always heard those parents that say, oh, the child's angelic at school. When we get home, oh my goodness. So there's, you do act differently in different situations, so it's good to have it across there. Okay. So what else do you do after you've got this going or in the process of doing that? You can, really important to shape a consistent yes or no. You can get so much information out of yes or no, but not all yes/no questions are the same. Asking a child if they want a cookie is really different than asking them things like, is Vancouver the capital of British Columbia? No, it's not. It took me a while to figure that out when I came here. So you can use schedules and routine schedules. Now, I find it's easier to use in a school than at a home. before I had children, I couldn't understand why people weren't completely organized at home and had everything to do and spend all this time doing speech and language homework. Then I had a very rambunctious child with special needs, the oldest one, and she never is quiet. She doesn't sleep, and she's 39 years old, and we did survive her. She did grow up to be articulate and to read and write, but at times, as a child, we didn't have any way of doing that. I was working full-time, my husband was working full-time, we don't have any relatives or family in this country, so it was all up to us, and it was exhausting. And then I started thinking, how dare I ask these parents to do all these things, especially when their child has more needs than what my child. And then I had a second one, surprised, with him, and he was so easygoing, but he ended up with special needs as well. So it does take a lot out of you.